This podcast is brought to you by Hospice of the Western Reserve. We focus on improving quality of life for your loved one. You don't have to do this alone. Give us a call. Your family, our purpose. Together.
Live from Westlake Community Services, welcome to the innovative interactive video podcast from SLA Video Productions. Here to entertain and enlighten, both live and on demand on the SLA Video Productions YouTube channel. So you work out to stay fit, but what about fitness for your brain? Today, we're going to find out what you need to know to keep your brain health in top-notch shape. SLA Video Productions welcomes Dr. Krystal Culler and LeAnne Stuver to the podcast table to help us understand the importance of brain health. Welcome, LeAnne and Krystal.
Be here. My name's Krystal. I'm a doctor of behavioral health with a background in a lot of the social sciences. I've studied psychology of adult development and aging, gerontology, and sociology. I've spent about 14 years in the educational system, knowing I wanted to know more about the brain and how it can help people live healthier, active, vibrant lives. I had an opportunity in 2017 to represent Cleveland, Ohio, as an Atlantic Fellow for Equity and Brain Health at Trinity College, Dublin. And during that time, I got to train with global experts across the world to better understand aspects of dementia prevention and brain health and what we can do today to improve our lives longer term to live healthier lives. So that led me to the genesis of calling my colleague LeAnne one day and say, "What do you think about a virtual brain health center?" And she goes, "That sounds like a great idea." And we launched in October 2020. So I'm going to let LeAnne tell you a little bit about her background so you know where we are today and having this chat, all things brain health.
Good morning. Great to see everyone and those of you online as well. My name is LeAnne Stuver. I'm the Director of Lifelong Learning for the Virtual Brain Health Center. My background is in nursing. I was a hospital nurse for 10 years before I decided that my strength was really the educational side of nursing and teaching patients what they needed to know about their health. So I went back to school and got my master's in education, and then I spent 20 years on a large senior living campus on the east side of Cleveland, where I ran and implemented all of their lifelong learning programs for the campus residents and some community programs as well. Krystal and I worked together there for a short period of time, and we always thought along the same lines. We always were on the same page in everything we wanted to do in the brain health arena and how important it was. So it made sense when we no longer actually worked together in a building that this virtual brain health center made sense, that we could continue our passion and our work for brain health. So Krystal, why don't you tell them a little bit more about why we felt the Virtual Brain Health Center was so important?
Yeah, I'm glad you got to share a little bit more about our backgrounds and our time we spent working together. What we see in studies all across the U.S. and across the globe is brain health is an important aspect of our health and well-being. It tends to rank among top health concerns among adults and aging adults. Typically in those studies, it comes in as the second most important health concern, right under heart health. And luckily, with all the research that we see with that coming online is what's good for your heart is good for your brain. So luckily, if you're doing heart healthy things, you're doing brain healthy things, which we will dive into later in this chat. But knowing that brain health is a top health concern, it's how do people get that information about brain health? And that's where there's this big gap in services. Most people have awareness that brain health is important, but they don't necessarily know what are the good things for your brain or what they can do about it. So they're out there seeking a lot of information that's research-informed and evidence-based. And luckily, what we know about our lifestyle is, for brain health, 90% of our brain health concerns are lifestyle-based. 10% is genetics. So I'll let you think about what that means for you. When I hear those statistics, I think, unfortunately, I don't get to blame my family tree for too many things. But on the other hand, there's a lot of things I have in control. And once we learn a little bit more about those lifestyle factors, we can decide what things we can tackle together. And to recognize that brain health is personal for all of us. We all have different needs that may ebb and flow across our lifetime, but there's things we can do today that can help us build healthier, happy, more vibrant brains for tomorrow, for ourselves, for our families, for our friends, and for our communities. So that's what gets me and LeAnne really excited is we get to help people understand more things about brain health and what they get to do in the now. So just so you know, 93% of Americans recognize that brain health is important, and they want to know how they can help maintain and improve it. So I'm guessing if you're joining us in person or online, you might be one of those 93% of Americans. So thank you for tuning in, and we are going to dive into even more information about your brain health. But for some logistics, if you're tuning in online, feel free to put your questions in the chat. We'll have time to touch base on those at the end. And if you're in the audience, jot down your questions as they come to mind. We cover a lot of information about brain health. Don't stress your brain in trying to remember the question you want to ask. Jot it down and get it out of your brain, and we'll circle back at the end. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A. We're here to be your resource.
Okay, so we've identified that brain health is important to people, and we know there's something we can do about it because Krystal just told us that. But do we know what brain health actually means? Is there a good definition of brain health?
That's a great question, and it's probably something on many people's minds. And I'm just going to preface it with, we don't have a universal definition of what brain health is. So for some, there may be confusion. We have really changed our focus in recent years on understanding what falls under this broad definition or umbrella of brain health. For the longest time, we linked the health of our brain to disease states related to the brain, Alzheimer's disease, other dementias, Parkinson's, MS, depression, anxiety. And the view was if you had any brain-based disease condition, brain health didn't necessarily align with that. I like to share now that we have said you can be brain healthy still with disease states related to the brain. Brain health is for everyone. It does, despite age or any of those things. So now that we've shifted our field from having the notion that brain health and care is for anyone of all ages with any type of disease, whether it's brain-based, whether it's a chronic health condition, an acute health condition, any of those things, it really opens up the field. If you're hearing other definitions about brain health, we tend to focus a lot on outcomes of your brain, performance things we ask your brain to do, things that might already come to mind when we're thinking about your brain, memory, things you can recall, asking it to do multiple steps in a sequence. So things that you challenge yourself to do every day that might give yourself a little bit of a headache if you do something that's a little too challenging. So all of those complex tasks related to your brain sometimes fall in under brain health. But typically, if we want to just think of a very broad definition of brain health, we can categorize it as thinking, feeling, and doing. All of those types of things. But really, the most simplistic way I like to describe it to other people is how to optimize your brain to thrive at any age. So it doesn't have to be performance-based. It doesn't have to necessarily be an output of what you're asking your brain to do. So I like the World Health Organization's definition of brain health is good brain health is a state in which every individual can realize their own abilities and optimize their cognitive, emotional, psychological, and behavioral functioning to cope with life situations. And I'm guessing many of us have been doing a lot of that over the past 2 years, living through an unprecedented pandemic, but realizing how holistic that definition is for your own brain health and wellness, and that every one of us has an access to brain health and things we can do today to optimize and thrive.
Many of us, when we go to see our physician, get asked a lot of questions about our physical health, may even ask questions about how our heart health is doing, how a lot of other body processes are functioning. But I think I hear from a lot of people that your physician may not always ask you how your brain is doing. If you're of Medicare age, they sometimes do that real little quick memory test of remember the words and draw the clock to check off that box for Medicare, but they don't really delve into what other things that you're doing that are brain healthy. So why does brain health matter? Why should that start being incorporated into our holistic health outlook with our physicians?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. That's a follow-up to understanding exactly what brain health is. And there may be some terms that I like to just use to describe this question, or at least reply to your question, is things you may hear if you're reading articles about the brain, listening or tuning in to news coverage about recent research coming out about the brain. But it's that our brain has the ability to generate new neurons until we're no longer here on the earth. And that happens through things we do with our lifestyle. So if you move your body through physical exercise, you can grow new neurons. If you meditate, you have the ability to grow new neurons. And those things are also related to the hippocampus, the area of your brain strongly related to memory. So we know certain lifestyle things we do helps our brain still grow. So we debunk that myth of aging, that growing our brain is only for the young. It happens all throughout our lifetime. And our brain is also able to adapt and change to our environment, which if you hear the term neuroplasticity, that is what they're talking about. So all the things we do throughout our lifetime, any way that you spend your time through your leisure activities, through your volunteerism, through education that you have had, through trying new and different things, hopefully tuning in and learning something new today will help. That helps mold and sculpt your brain. And our brain is always adapting and changing to our environment. And we have the ability to continue to do that till we're no longer here. And the last thing is these two things help us build up cognitive reserve. So if you hear this term, this is our brain's protection against the development of damage to brain disease. So we hear this in a couple different studies or different ways, in that all of those things we have done throughout our lifetime, anything we have done since we were born, the leisure activities, the education, the physical fitness, all add up to a bank. And what we see with this comes into play with individuals who have some brain damage, or especially Alzheimer's disease or dementia. It helps delay when their symptoms present. So people that have very high cognitive reserve may not show symptoms for 7 years. But what we've learned with neuroimaging, so the way we can take a picture of your brain, they may show some hallmark symptoms of Alzheimer's disease and dementia, but be asymptomatic, meaning they're not showing symptoms in their day-to-day lives. So cognitive reserve buffers when you show some symptoms of decline, upwards of about 7 years. So we know our lifestyle, the way we live our lives, and the way we spend our time can bolster our brain. It's not a perfect science by any means, but it does have a large impact on what we're able to do today. And I want to share with you, all of this is a lifelong process. We are always constantly adding to building up our new brains, and it's never too late to start a new brain healthy habit. One of the quick things we know we can do is if you stop smoking, your brain and body benefit. If you stay properly hydrated, you're going to feel those effects quicker. So it's not too late to pick up new health habits at any point in time in your life, or to begin to start to try and do new things that will add to your brain and your body's benefits down the line.
Thank you. When we started our center, we wanted to have a very good vision of what we would be able to deal with and present in a virtual world. So we decided to come up with a model of wellness that we knew we could support through our virtual center. So Krystal, could you tell us a little bit more about our evidence-based model of brain wellness that we use when we plan our classes?
Sure. I think if you look at other institutions related to the brain, you'll see various models of brain health and wellness. So if you go to Cleveland Clinic, if you go to AARP, everyone adopts a model of brain health. So I want to point that out to you. What we wanted to do, we were intentional with what we could support people in brain health in a virtual environment, and what is the strongest evidence and research that says when you adhere to these types of things, you can get the bang for your buck, and really having some good positive health outcomes. And our model of brain wellness really does look at 4 areas. I'm going to list them and then we'll go in depth with them for you. We focus in on cognitive engagement, social connections, personal well-being, and physical activity. So the first one we really like to focus on is cognitive engagement. So how do you engage your mind is so important. And we see a lot of research that comes out that education, as much education as you can get as early in life, is very important. But also, it's how do you continue to stimulate your mind over the rest of your lifetime? And I'm guessing if you're here with us or online, you're still seeking out educational opportunities. And how do you continue to do that? And how do you continue to stretch your mind in different ways? So not just taking topics or learning things you already know, stretching beyond your comfort zone. The analogy I always like to use is make sure you're trying to do something that makes your mind sweat, just like if you're doing physical exercise, that would make your body sweat. A rule of thumb, and I'll let you decide if it's too little or too much, is about 20 minutes a day to really engage your mind in something that's not too easy, but appropriately challenging. And that's going to look different for all of us. But as you start to get to the level where this isn't so hard anymore, you need to ramp it up. So it's almost just like exercise. As you hit that plateau, you've got to ramp it up again, or you need to stretch to something new and different. So I can always joke in the crowd we're in today. For me, that's reading the Cleveland sports section. I don't really follow too many sports. I'm not going to say what area I'm closer to, but it is not Cleveland. It's Cleveland's rivals most of the time. But it's also the fact that it lends to our next section that LeAnne will be talking about. It's the social thing to do, right? A lot of people are talking sports. And so that I know that I'm going to learn new things. I've learned a lot about Cleveland sports by doing that. But it also lets me have the know into talking with other people and getting to do. And I learn new and different things. It's also not my norm for the section of the newspaper. So I want to share that as an example with you of a way to stretch in a different activity of something you may already be doing, and the idea that it can help you open up and learn new and different things and bridge to the next section LeAnne's going to tell us a little bit about on social connections.
Yeah, we were very deliberate when we started our center to include social connections. It's always been something that's important for our brain, but I think we became much more aware of it in the pandemic, especially at the start of the pandemic, when we were all supposed to be socially distancing, which I don't like that term. It should be physically distancing. We want to stay socially connected. And I think it's come to the forefront in brain health. So we very deliberately made all of our programs are live and interactive because we want to have the ability to interact with our students, to have our students interact with each other, to foster that type of social connection. Now, that does not mean you have to come to one of our classes and participate. We have many students that just want to stay behind their camera, not have their picture on, and they may put their questions in the chat. That's okay. That is still social interaction. You're still getting your questions answered live and in person. So that's the second area that we feel is very important that we want to honor in our model. Krystal, I'll let you go to the next one.
And this one always aligns because I talked about engaging your brain, and now we're going to engage the body. So what is it that you can do to physically move? And we like the word physical activity because for some reason when we hear physical exercise, Most people have that mental picture of someone out there running or running a marathon, and movement doesn't have to look that way. I think many of us know, if you've ever cleaned your house or worked in a garden, how much movement and how your body can feel after you do some of those things. And so movement, physical movement and engagement can look very different to all of us. But to continue to move your body in a way that you can, and to reap the benefits of exercise. Research shows that even just 5 minutes of movement at a time can have benefits for you. So break it up if you can't do the longer intervals, but stay active and move in ways that you can. Probably in the season right now in Northeast Ohio, where physical activity looks a little different. We're in a winter season, but finding ways that we can move that make us safe. The global recommendation is we're looking for 150 minutes of movement a week and aiming for something that raises your heart rate up a little bit, as well as doing a little bit of strength training to maintain your muscle tone. And the recommendation is, I know people always ask, what's the best physical exercise? The one you like, and the one that you'll stick to. And so for all of us, that may look a little bit different, but trying to meet those movement criteria to the best that you can, but also doing something that you enjoy is the one that's most likely going to be something you can maintain longer term and adhere to over time. And so for the last part of our model, LeAnne?
The last area that we address is personal well-being. And this kind of is the kitchen sink of brain health, I think is a good way to put it. It captures everything that didn't fall under one of our other categories. So maybe it's diet, maybe it's personal relationships, emotional wellness. There's so many areas that fall under personal well-being that we also make sure that we try to address through some of our different classes, whether it's learning to meditate, because that's so good for your brain. So when you're looking for something other than those things we talked about before, they fall under our personal wellness area. So we're very glad you all are here with us today, and we especially want to thank our sponsor, the Hospice of the Western Reserve.
Hospice of the Western Reserve, celebrating the individual worth of each life. We focus every day on relieving suffering, enhancing comfort, promoting quality of life, and supporting those who are grieving. Here for you 24/7 with nationally recognized care. Call us today at 1-800-707-8922. That's 1-800-707-8922.
Before the break. One of the things that often comes up in questions, similar to what Krystal mentioned with brain health, you can have physical conditions that maybe it's high blood pressure, maybe it's diabetes, maybe it's some other diagnosis that you get from your physician. Part of this personal well-being area is managing those chronic conditions. So learning about the condition, knowing what you can do about it, learning to manage it, to take your medications, to follow your diet. So a lot of those things also fall under this personal well-being. Also restfulness, that's the other thing that's real important. Sleep is another area that's very important for brain health. And I know Krystal and I struggled maybe a little bit overnight and being nervous about coming here today with our sleep, but I think we'll sleep very well tonight when we know that we've reached out to all of you this way today. But again, those are just a couple more areas of this personal wellness that I wanted to mention that I left out before the break. So we've talked about a lot of information related to brain wellness and brain health. But Krystal and I wanted to spend a few minutes to share with you some of our personal top tips for brain health. So Krystal, I'm going to let you go first. What are your top 2 tips for brain care that you'd like to share?
It's always tough to pick just one, but I know that's the mind challenge for me. So my best advice would be to intentionally make your mind and body sweat every day. So I know I mentioned that earlier, but I'll try to give some examples. And so make a fitness routine for both and build it in the best you can. So the interval for your mind is 20 minutes a day. And the interval for your body would be about the same, 20 to 30 minutes a day. And you could break that down into 2 10-minute sessions for both and fold that into your morning. But if it becomes an intentional part of your day. So maybe in the morning you wake up and you read the newspaper, but you're reading something different. Read the newspaper out loud. Activate a different area of your brain. Or read an article about the news with the intent that you're going to go tell someone else about it. You process that information differently than if you're just reading it leisurely for yourself. So think about activities that may already be a part of your daily routine and how you can maybe level that up to then make it more challenging for your mind. And so you can see how maybe those 10-minute segments can go pretty quick. And then think about, once you hit that plateau, what's the next thing you could do? Or you could get really challenging and try something very new and different. My husband's in the room with us, and I bought balloon animals for us to learn how to do over the pandemic. Something completely different, something a little bizarre and off the wall, but I thought, it's fun. Neither one of us know how to do it, and we could learn. No harm. Something completely different to try, and it was way out there. And yes, he gave me that look that maybe some of you are probably looking at your computer screen saying balloon animals, but there is something a little uplifting about seeing a dog and a giraffe and some bright colors around your house till you pop them and startle yourself a little bit. But there's all these new and different things you can try nowadays, and think about ways to stretch your brain. A lot of people do that with origami because you can just find paper that's around your house and fold it and try something new and different out of the box. And if you get a little flustered, you can put it aside and come back the next day and just keep building. And you could know, if you're setting that clock for just 10 minutes, that this is the time I'm allocating for something really challenging to do, and see how that works for you. And same with fitness. You can think about it in terms of spiritual fitness, where maybe you're folding in meditation, or a time to do creative writing, or writing gratitude, or taking a time to mail someone a card and tell them thank you, and keep in touch with them. You can think about that in some different ways for yourself as that second interval. And same with something physical, trying something new and different. Maybe it's just a gentle stretch before bed, because that's not something you usually do, but realizing you need some other tool to unwind for the day. So realizing adding that in helps promote restfulness before bed, and you fall asleep a little quicker. Seeing what tools you need and how you can fold in purposefully these little segments of time to optimize your mind and your body. I think those are my best tips.
Okay. And I'm going to share my favorite tips in the social connections area, because this has become kind of my favorite area to address. So years ago, when I first started thinking about brain health and teaching brain health, I always thought socialization had to be in person, face to face. And I used to argue with people that that was the only way you could have social connections. But I've learned over time, and with dealing with my aging parents who have some communication deficits, there are a lot of other ways that you can stay socially connected with people. And I think those ways became even more important during the pandemic, when many of us were maybe afraid to get face-to-face with people. I think there's still a lot of that, even though we're kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully. But email, text messaging, that is still an acceptable way to communicate with other people, if that's how you prefer to do it. I want you to take a few minutes and think in your mind, how many social connections have you already had today? Think about how many people you have interacted with. Have you had any phone calls? Have you talked to one another here or with someone in your household, for those that are listening online. Think about how many interactions you have had so far today. Think about how many you might have through the rest of the day. The idea is to keep growing that social network. I want you to continue to interact with more and more people each day to keep your brain health happy, whether it's on the computer, whether it's in person, whether it's writing a card to someone. My mom is trying to, one person at a time, keep the U.S. Postal Service in business with her writing of notes. So that counts. That is brightening someone's day and making a social connection. So I really want you all to try to think about the ways that you can build and grow your social connections, because that is so important for your brain health. That's my top tip. Now, we also have a handout on our website that it's the 10 tips for brain health, and it's downloadable on our website. So it's free to download. So if you go to our website, virtualbrainhealthcenter.com, it is free to download. And that gives you even more tips that you can easily incorporate into your day to get those practical everyday tips to improve your brain health. Now, in addition to the classes, these live interactive classes that we offer, there are also several other services that we provide through our center. So, Krystal, can you share some of those with our audience?
Sure. I know you mentioned this a little bit earlier with talking about starting a conversation about our brain health or memory care with healthcare providers. We do offer free healthy brain checkups. So it's a quick way to find out how your brain health is doing. We do those virtually online. The other option we have is on our website. If you're looking for a computer-based healthy brain checkup, we have that on our resources page. You can click there and find the computerized healthy brain checkups to see how your brain may be doing, and at least a way to start a conversation with the healthcare provider that you do work with. We have a large resource center on our website as well. So if you're looking for information about some of these topics of brain health that we've talked about, physical exercise, wanting to know a little bit more about what a healthy brain checkup is, we have an article about that too. So we have different articles on there that we have written or that we've been featured in, or that are just other articles from other organizations that help clarify some of these things about brain health on the website that you can find. And then LeAnne had mentioned here too, we have a couple different handouts that we have created that summarize things about brain health. One of the ones we have on there available is about cognitive fitness, that are all free, that you can download. That's a handout and a resource for you. So it may help you remember about wanting to create that brain fitness routine for you. You can go right online to virtualbrainhealthcenter.com, print that out, and have the resource for yourself. We have 10 tips for brain health and a few other ones. LeAnne covered about personal well-being, what falls under that category, some information and things you can do. That's another resource. So really, we try to help be a one-stop shop for things that you need to know about brain health and the information that you can use today to optimize your own brain care. And one thing we would like to do is, if you're tuning in, or for you in the audience, we do have our mega event of the year coming up. It is Brain Awareness Week, March 14th through the 20th. And we have partnered with over 15 experts from national and international organizations. And we are offering 17 different free events that you are welcome to join live from the comfort of your own home, or with others if you would like to. It's open to individuals and groups. And we are diving into a lot of the different topics we've talked about here in brain health. So importance of brain health, topics on stress, new innovative things happening on brain health and wellness, some new ones that you might want to try, understanding how laughter can impact the brain, as well as some new physical movement programs if you're looking for new ways to move at home. You are all welcome to join us, or share and tell your friends. Anyone can join in with the Zoom link. So that's our big latest thing that I know both of us have been working on, LeAnne.
Yeah. And we also, in October, also celebrate Active Aging Week. So that's another week that we highlight a week-long big group of programming that we highlight for free to groups and individuals. So if you keep an eye on our website, come October, there will be another big week there as well. So Krystal, we've covered a lot of different areas here this morning. Is there anything that I was supposed to ask you or that we talked about that we felt was important that you want to highlight that we maybe missed during our talk this morning?
I think one thing that's worthwhile mentioning is there are many things that fall under this brain health umbrella on information, and we have a limited time together. So to recognize things like hydration, diet, the immediate environment that we live in, there's lots of information coming online about many different factors and the way those things impact our brain health and our well-being that we really didn't get to dive into today. But we do address a lot of those things separately in individual classes that we offer or in some talks, even like the benefits of happiness, how nature influences our brain. There are so many things and there is so much to learn. So if there's some information that you're looking for, stay tuned. There's a lot on our resources page. Or if you ever have a question, you can ask it today when we get to the Q&A coming up here in just a few minutes, or feel free to email us. We really do try to be a resource to get you to reliable information about your own brain health and care.
And we are also open to suggestions for new classes. So if you read something in a magazine or you hear something on TV and you would actually like to know more about it, feel free to reach out to us. We're always looking for new information that people are interested in to develop new classes and new ways to support that information that's coming out. And if you want to get in touch with us, this is a good point to put in. Share with everyone how they can stay in contact with us, Krystal.
Luckily, we're easy to find at virtualbrainhealthcenter.com, just like our name. And it is an exciting time. We are really at a point in time where people want to know about the brain, and our policy is getting that way. We just had signed into policy a national brain health prevention goal. So we know now research dollars are following behind, getting more resources coming this way. You're going to be seeing a lot more, if you haven't already, about things in the brain, more federal funding coming this way. And I think it's a great time to be learning all the ways of things that we can do now to optimize our own brain care for ourselves, our families, people close to us. And so stay tuned with your questions. And if you have them, feel free to ask. If you want to ask them offline, you can email us at info@virtualbrainhealthcenter.com.
Great. This concludes the actual formal presentation part of our podcast this morning. But Krystal and I are very interested in answering any questions that any of you may have. If you're online, you can enter those questions into the chat. For those of you that are here in the audience, Joanne or Cheryl will come around with the microphone so that you can ask them so that everyone can hear it. While we're getting organized to do that, though, we're going to start with one that we often get asked from individuals or out in the community when we're out. And the first one is, we often get asked, are there any good books or resources out there that share our same ideas of brain health? So, Krystal?
I have two resources I'd like to share. One is this pamphlet from the Dana Foundation. It is on successful aging in your brain. If you are here in the audience, a copy is available at the table where you came in or when you exit. If you're online, you can find this on our resources page under Brain Health. You can download the PDF for free. So it has a lot of information about the aging brain and health. If you're looking for a book that you would like to read that goes a little bit more in depth, I recommend Dr. Sanjay Gupta's book, Keep Sharp, Build a Better Brain at Any Age. He wrote this in collaboration with AARP's Global Council on Brain Health, which works with not only AARP, but Age UK, and brings together lots of leading experts in the field of brain health around multiple topics. And so I will share, if you are a member of AARP, you can look into their Staying Sharp brain health program. They have lots of resources there as well about brain health.
Okay, so thanks, LeAnne and Krystal. And after that, I'm ready for a brain checkup. So I'll start here in the room. Is there anyone here in the room that has a question? Patrice, what is your question?
There are lots of video games that say that they're good for your brain. Is that true?
You want it or you want me?
Go ahead.
You know, I think that's kind of a double-edged sword answer. So most of the research that I have read is that if you do some of the actual video games, let's start with that, because there's a difference between computerized games and video games per se. Video games that are more of a game that you play, as you play them more and more, your brain gets good at playing those games. And that's okay, because if you're not a video game player, that can be something different to challenge your brain. Computerized games can also benefit your brain, but you have to continually do something new and different. You can't just find a computer game that you really like to play and just keep playing that and not ramp up the intensity. I know some of the online games you may see have a timer that may drive you crazy and you want to turn that timer off. My suggestion is do not turn the timer off. The best video games or computer games that you can play for your brain are when you're put under pressure, and it's speed. So you want, for that 20 minutes that Krystal talked about to really make your brain sweat, you want it to be hard. You don't want it to be fun. So I think there are video games and computerized games that can benefit your brain. AARP has a lot of free games on their website that you can try, but you want them to be challenging in order for them to really stretch your brain. But you do not have to do computerized games. Puzzles, paper and pencil puzzles, can also be challenging for your brain. But again, you have to do them so that they're hard, not that you just breeze right through them. You want to really make your brain sweat. So does that answer your question?
Great. I'm going to take one from the chat here. So this is from Sandra D. And this is a two-part question, and I'm very interested in this myself. What is the % of people who've been diagnosed with dementia in their 50s? And what are some symptoms people can look for?
Let me go.
So I think it's basically younger in life.
Yeah,
but
I do not have a percentage off the top of my head of how many people are diagnosed early. But I do know that dementia that is diagnosed early in your 50s is usually one of the more hereditary types. So those who get it under 60, usually it's one of the more hereditary types of dementia that you get, and it usually progresses a lot faster. If you're older when you start noticing the signs of dementia, they're usually a little more subtle and come up on a longer period of time. Usually it's more with memory. That's usually the first thing that comes up when you're older. When you're younger, it often tends to be personality changes or impulse control. Sometimes it's overeating or maybe gambling a lot. It can be those kinds of things that come up more in that dementia in the younger population. So it looks very different, and the reason for that is it affects different parts of the brain. So dementia will look very different. If we all were to come down with a diagnosis of dementia in this room, it could look very different for all of us because it all depends which part of the brain is most affected. And those with a younger onset, it tends to be more in the frontal part of their brain. So it's more those processing things and impulse control. So hopefully that answers the question.
I think so. So this is the second part. are there studies on trauma or PTSD and the onset of dementia?
I would say there likely is, but I'm not familiar with all of that work.
Okay, so back to the audience. Is there any other questions? Okay, this is Janet, right?
Yes. We have 3 Janets in a row here.
Oh, there we go.
Yes, I like to play the New York Times spelling bee game. Me too. And I really work hard to be a genius, but it makes me crazy. So is that bad if I keep working to the point of frustration to reach the genius level?
If it's still challenging to your brain, keep going. And one of the things I would say is maybe stretch beyond something different too. Is if you know you're getting too frustrated, maybe try something that's not a word-based game to balance things out. And for many of us, we tend to lean towards more word-based games. So trying a numbers-based puzzle or a visual type of puzzle, which is where the computerized games come in to be nice. Things that are more difficult or more frustrating, where if you printed it out, you'd have to cut it and then physically manipulate it. So computer-based games can be a nice balance that would help with that. But if you're still doing okay with those, don't frustrate yourself too much. Sometimes coming back with a fresh set of eyes is really great for puzzles when you hit a spot and see what to do. But as long as you're still enjoying it, keep doing what you're doing and aiming. Maybe we're going to find you at one of the spelling bee competitions. They do have those.
Janet, I'm jealous because I do the New York Times spelling bee every day, and I'm just thrilled if I get to amazing. It's very rare that I get to genius, but it is, and I have to stop and go to something else and come back to it, many times. So, okay, this is another question from our chat from Lisa Abraham. I have lived a lifelong pursuit of health, wellness, and social engagement, but I feel like family history has a bearing on when, if dementia presents. Do we need to approach brain health exercises differently?
I think that's a great question. And we see from a lot of studies and research that people that have a family history of dementia tend to be more proactive and have levels of awareness. And it is not an exact science of if there is a genetic component. If it is, it's linked to APOE4, which is just one type or one area where there is a higher prevalence with dementia. But it's not certain that if you have it, that gene's going to turn on and it will lead to a dementia. So we're still unraveling a lot of information of what we know about some of the Alzheimer's disease and dementias. And I'd like to just say, when we say dementia, there's over 100 different types of dementia that fall under that umbrella. So it can be a lot of different things we're talking about. Some of them do have a specific genetic component, but again, it's still not a perfect science. But what we do know is the brain healthy lifestyle helps a lot. And those that do have a history or something in their family tree tend to look out for information about brain health, take up a brain healthier lifestyle, and tend to be more proactive anyways. And whether it's giving to research, living things more healthily, or sharing more information with others already. I don't have an exact answer for that. We're still learning the science ourselves and creating some of those larger studies to better understand it.
But where you come in helping people recognize or at least start working on these exercises when they're much younger, if they know that there's that history.
Well, and I think the other really important thing about dementia is that science is showing that by the time you have symptoms, you have probably had changes in your brain for possibly 20 years. So people Krystal's age need to be thinking about brain health just as much as those of us that are getting older. It's really important for this brain healthy lifestyle to start younger. That's going to be the best protection for dementia in the long run, is when kids and young adults learn they need to start it as early as possible. And that's going to be the best protection that we build in this brain healthy lifestyle throughout our entire life. But it's never too late to start. But the earlier we start, the better benefit that we're going to get.
And that does link your two online questions, is if you take the 20 years from early onset, that does get you right to your 30s, which is really right after your brain peaks in development. So it's everyone's issue to learn more about brain health.
Okay, we have another question in the room. You are?
I'm Dennis. Thank you first for all the information you shared with us today. It's very helpful. You just made a comment that made me think of a question of something you said earlier, which had to do with cognitive reserve, and that can delay the symptoms of dementia. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It seems like if what you just said, you would maybe want to have those symptoms so you could get some kind of diagnosis as to what might be the cause of your dementia, as opposed to delaying those symptoms even longer.
The way I like to look at that delay is you are improving the quality of your life. So instead of maybe coming up with those first symptoms of dementia at age 65, maybe you never realize you have it till age 85. It's actually not changing the disease process in your brain. It's changing those outward symptoms. And we have a good diagram, but it's hard to explain in person. But if you have a trajectory on your life of your brain health, that's kind of an arc. And if you increase brain healthy activities for your whole life, you end up with a second arc that's higher. And it's that difference in between those arcs that's that protection layer that you receive. So, like I said, instead of noticing the symptoms at 60, you don't notice them till 80. Because there's not really a treatment yet for many of the dementias, I think what we need to look at is quality of life issues. So if we can have 20 extra years of quality functioning life with our brain, that is a benefit. And it may not necessarily harm you. It's not like cancer, that if you don't get diagnosed right away with cancer so they can treat it and get rid of the tumor so it doesn't spread, not necessarily the same with dementia. The disease is still present, but because of those brain healthy lifestyles, your brain is still functioning well for you. And that's what cognitive reserve means. That functioning piece that keeps you functioning well. That's what you gain. The disease is still there, but you're functioning well for a longer period of time. Mm-hmm.
Great. Any more questions here in the room? Okay, I'll go back. There was a couple more in the chat. Okay. From Marianne Wright, is repressing bad memories harmful to your brain?
That's a good one. Yeah. Not sure that maybe either one of us is completely qualified to answer that question, but do you know of any research?
I don't know that I've read anything specific on it.
Yeah.
I would have to look more into that, but I will gladly follow up by email.
So it would be, it would kind of be similar to maybe the PTSD or, it's stress.
Yeah.
Basically.
As far as PTSD and stressful situations, the amygdala in our brain is what's really kicked in when we have those strong emotional attachments. And a lot of the brain healthy lifestyles that are in response to stress help calm the amygdala. So I think that would help with some of that, but I don't know if it actually harms it to repress it. I'm not aware of that.
Right. Okay. And I think this is as similar to what degree to nostalgic memories help or hurt your brain health. So that's kind of in the same vein of the last question, right?
Memory is a very interesting topic that is very in-depth because there's multiple types of memories that we get into. And memories if we use them in a way to bring up and reminisce, can have a positive effect, but it can also have that negative side depending on the type of memories we're working to recall. And so it depends, I would say, on the type of memory we're focusing on. And so if they want to email us the questions, I will gladly do my due diligence and send a more thoughtful reply than rather doing something on the fly, so I can get them a more complete response for that, because it does get very complex with memory and memory systems, but I will gladly follow up by email. If they want to send something to info@virtualbrainhealthcenter.com, we will do that for you.
So I have a question about the brain check. Do you make an appointment? How do people sign up for that?
Yeah, under our Contact Us form on our website, there's a way you can request an appointment, or you could email us. And one of the things about that is it is recommended to do that as just so you have a baseline. And you know where your baseline is in case anyone ever has a health issue that comes up down the line. And if you are looking for a computerized brain-based assessment, I will say I have no affiliation with recommending this, but from my years in the field and what people tell me is the most user-friendly, I would recommend the Cleveland Clinic's one. It is very well done. It's a portal. You sign up with your email. They have a lovely dashboard that will give you some brain health recommendations, but it's a nice assessment that will be a starting point for you to do a computerized brain health checkup, get some information, and if you give them permission for your email, they'll remind you a year from now to come back, and if you want to do another checkup. So it's a nice way to monitor something. And then you have information that you can start this conversation with your healthcare provider. And the nice way is everyone should be talking about their brain care to their healthcare provider. The same way you would be talking about the care of your physical health or your foot or any other part of your body. And I know that sounds a little different because of things we've had associated with the brain over all of these years. People look at me all the time and I say, that's usually my first conversation I have with my provider, but mine's a little bit different, and I know I have a lot of different perspective and training, but I want to recognize our brain health encompasses a lot of different topics that are sensitive to people. And I do recognize that, but encourage you to start those conversations early with your providers. Start having some of that dialogue and see. They may recommend things that might not be on your mind already of things you could do. They're a great resource to get you started with other things that could be a part of your own healthcare journey. And no, it will look different for all of us. But if there's a way we can be a resource for you, just let us know.
And sometimes those memory checkups or the brain checkups may kind of make you feel scared that you don't maybe want to know what's going on. But I want you to think about it like your blood pressure. You get your blood pressure checked on a regular basis. You get your blood sugar levels checked on a regular basis. These memory checkups or your brain health checkup, those are just as important, and they're not typically recommended, so we really encourage them as part of your yearly physical, so to speak.
So it sounds like you had addressed earlier that there would be more federal money and attention paid to brain health. So hopefully maybe our doctors will start asking us about these things instead of us having to ask them, right?
Getting there, signed into policy between Christmas and New Year's, and it's been a part of your Medicare wellness visit for quite a few years, depending on an individual, but those might not be as thorough. They're usually a quicker screen, depending on someone's health or health status. But this one's a little more in depth if people want it, or there's lots of other screening protocols you can follow and at least start a conversation and have that information available.
Great. I'm going to pass this to my cohort here, who we never worry about brain health because she never stops. She's either working, skiing, cycling, something. So, Joanne.
My brain doesn't always sweat, though. Okay. Well, thank you. We want to let's have LeAnne first.
Yeah, we really want to thank all of you that are here in person, those that are joining us online. We're so glad that you spent this time with us today to really learn more about brain health and learn how you can take control of it and make those improvements in your life. Please visit our website, virtualbrainhealthcenter.com, or email us. And we especially want to thank our sponsor today, the Hospice of the Western Reserve, for sponsoring this event today. So thank you so much to everyone.
This podcast has been brought to you by Hospice of the Western Reserve. Here so you can be a family. Here so you are not alone. Your family, our purpose. Together.
This has been live from Westlake Community Services, the innovative interactive video podcast on brain health from SLA Video Productions. Hope you guys enjoyed the conversation, and we want to hear from you too. Contact us online or social media with ideas and suggestions for future content. Also, this live podcast is also available now on demand at our SLA Video Production YouTube channel. Thanks for coming.